Hey guys, welcome to Timeless Mysteries Live. I know this was kind of a surprise live again, but this time I did give you guys a little bit of a heads up as I posted this as about 15 minutes ago. And there's a button that says, do you want to go live now or set it up later? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Timeless Mysteries Live. I'm your host here at Timeless Mysteries. We're delving into the disturbing world of Edmund Kemper, infamously known by another name, the Co-Ed Killer. In this story, I'll guide you through his chilling crimes, the psychological scars rooted in his upbringing, and the unnerving revelation he shared once he was finally in custody. But this isn't just a typical retelling of facts. Based off of my last live, I thought you guys might enjoy another story version. So I'm kind of curious if this is going to be too scary for most people because it was kind of scary for me to write it. But Ed Kemper is a notorious serial killer. He's one of the scariest killers who repeatedly killed people. So if you are watching, please leave some comments in the chat section. And don't forget to click the emojis and hearts and stuff like that. But I'm about to get started. So if you missed out on the live version of this, don't feel bad. I don't know when I'm going to start, doing these on a regular basis, but I did have a lot of fun last time. But this story is going to be a little bit more scary than the story I told last week. Edmund Kemper liked to pick up college-age girls off the side of the road and pretend that he was going to take them wherever they needed to go. Instead, he would take them to their death. And I've written out a kind of novella style story to go along with that. It's based on some facts, but it's mostly fiction. I just want to let you guys know that. I don't know what you call it. It's like based on a true story, I guess, but still not quite true. The steel barrel of the revolver kisses her ribs before she can finish her sentence. The hitchhiker's easy smile collapses, replaced by a quiver on her lips and eyes gone wide. Ed Kemper keeps his own smile, polite and steady, as if nothing has changed. His finger tightens on the trigger just enough to show he's serious. Hey, Maribel, thanks for listening. Yeah, this guy has some really weird interviews. But let me get back to the story here. In the vacuum that follows, the only sound is the blinker's rhythmic click, click as the car idles on the gravel shoulder of a deserted mountain road. The sun has just dropped below the trees, painting the sky orange. But here under the thick pines, it's already dark. The girl's breath comes shallow and quick. He can almost hear her pounding heartbeat in that cramped Ford. The scent of her sweat, sharp with fear, mixes with the vinyl tang of the seats in the car. Take your hands off the door handle, Ed says softly. She obeys, trembling. Earlier, she hadn't thought twice about accepting a ride from this tall, soft-spoken stranger. He seemed safe, friendly, a bit shy maybe, but harmless. Now her trust has curdled into terror. Ed's voice remains calm, almost gentle. Don't scream. Do exactly what I say and you won't get hurt. A lie. He delivered With a reassuring nod and those empty brown eyes that mimic sympathy, he's done this before. He reaches over and, with a bizarre courtesy, brushes a strand of hair from her face. His large hand briefly grazes her cheek, and she flinches as if it were a snake. Ed tuts, chiding himself under his breath. Sorry about that, he murmurs, as though an accidental touch is the worst of her problems. The absurd politeness draws a confused sob from her throat. She doesn't know that Ed is savoring this moment, the stretch of seconds where hope still flickers in his victims, that precious ignorance before the inevitable. He removes the key from the ignition. The engine dies, leaving only the ticking of a cooling hood. She whimpers. In one quick motion, he lunges across her and slams something into the door handle. He watches her try to get out of the car unsuccessfully. He slips out of the car, gun trained on her through the open window. Gravel crunches under his boots as he moves around to her side. The forest is deathly quiet. Then a car races by. It'll likely be hours before another one passes by. Ed yanks open the passenger door and gestures with the revolver. Slide over, he orders. Her eyes dart to the trees outside, thinking of running, but he's twice her size. Even if by some miracle she escaped the car, she wouldn't get very far in these woods. Realizing this, she hesitates only for a second, keeping her hand visible. She starts to scoot across the bench seat towards the driver's side. The moment she's a few inches from the door, he lunges. He grabs her waist, he grabs her shoulder, and drags her out of the car with one massive yank. She gasps at his overwhelming strength. In one fluid move, Ed presses her face down on the hood of the car. The metal is still warm from the drive. With his forearm pinning her neck and the gun digging into her back, he uses his free hand to pull a pair of handcuffs from his jacket pocket, one of the little tools he prepared to keep things orderly. A pine cone cracks underfoot nearby. Ed freezes, head snapping up, scanning the tree line. Just an animal, he decides. Still, the interruption sends irritation prickling through him. He needs to move fast now. He clamps the cold cuffs around the girl's thin wrists. She starts to beg, voice high and thready, words spilling out in a frantic tumble. She'll do anything. She won't tell anyone. Please, please, just let her go. Ed isn't listening. Her pleas are background noise, like a radio playing faintly in another room. He focuses on the task. He shoves the muzzle hard against the base of her skull to shut her up. Shut up, he hisses, an edge slicing through his previously pleasant tone. She bites back a wail. In the dark, his eyes flatten, all pretense, the humanity draining away. Ed holsters the gun and wraps his huge hands around her throat. So what do you think? Is it an interesting story, or is nobody listening? Well, there's more. Hello. Yeah, I don't think anybody likes this story. Nobody's joined besides you, of course, and I appreciate that. But I was kind of curious how this would go. I've actually got 6,000 words here, and I don't actually like the next part because it's a little too gory for me. It's a little easier to write it when it's kind of like fiction, but it's still kind of based on a true story, and this kind of thing really is what he did. But Where was I? I'll keep reading. Just want to warn you, it's kind of gory here. If I can find my spot. I lost my place. He's focused on the task. He shoves the muzzle hard against the base of her skull to shut her up. Shut up, he hisses, an edge slicing through his previously pleasant tone. She bites back a wail. In the dark, his eyes flatten, all pretense of humanity draining away. Ed holsters the gun and wraps his huge hand around her throat. She manages a strangled cry as he lifts her off of the hood with frightening ease. Her feet kick the air, sneakers scraping uselessly against the bumper. His thumbs press deep into the soft flesh of her windpipe, crushing her screams. There, a sickening crackle of cartilage. Her nails rake at his arms. He doesn't even feel the scratches. Shh, he whispers, almost tenderly as her struggles begin to weaken. Her wide, tear-filled eyes lock onto his for one tortured moment. He tilts his head, watching curiously. Does she recognize the expression on his face? It's not rage, not exactly. He looks like he's concentrating, performing a difficult but necessary procedure. There's no hatred in his eyes, no joy either, just a distant focus. To him, she's already a corpse, and that she's already a corpse that hasn't stopped moving yet. Finally, her body goes limp. The fight drains out of her in one last spasm. Ed keeps squeezing for a few seconds longer, filling for a flutter of a pulse. Nothing. Only then does he ease her down onto the ground. The girl lies in a heap of awkward limbs and spilled blonde hair. One shoe has come off, flung a few feet away. Ed retrieves it almost thoughtfully and slips it back onto her foot. Then he steps back, hands on his hips, and surveys the scene. His chest heaves from exertion, the hot adrenaline singing in his veins. In the stillness, he hears a distant rush of blood in his ears and the muffled drip of saliva or blood from her slack mouth. A mosquito whines near his face. He swats it, annoyed by the intrusion. The thrill of those last moments is already fading, giving way to a familiar hollow emptiness. He frowns. A question rises in his mind, almost petulant. Is that it? It never lasts as long as he hopes. Ed drags the body off the road, grunting as he hauls her into the trunk of the Ford. Her head thumps against the rim as he shoves her in. He doesn't apologize this time. The smell of gasoline and old fast food wrappers mix with the coppery tang of blood from her nose. A few drops splatter on the bumper. He wipes them with an oily rag and tosses it in with her before he slams the trunk shut. He stands there in the darkness, breathing the cool night air. The pine trees loom around him, silent witnesses. If someone were to drive by now, they'd only see a tall man leaning against his car, smoking a cigarette under the moonlight. He could just smile and wave, get the friendly, gentle giant out for a late drive. No one would suspect what's hidden just a few feet away. Ed climbs back into the driver's seat. As he pulls onto the highway, he flips on the radio and hums along to the song. An old tune his mother used to like. The irony makes him smirk. Wind from the open window cools the sweat on his brow. In the rearview mirror, the stars are coming out, cold and distant. He merges onto a larger road toward town, blending into the sparse traffic with ease. Just another commuter heading home. When the red and blue lights suddenly flash behind him, Ed's muscles tense. For a split second, a vision of prison bars slammed through his mind. But he forces himself calm. He eases the car onto the shoulder and watches the patrol car pull up behind him. The trunk, with its grisly contents, seemed to grow louder in his imagination, picturing it thumping, the dead girl inside, somehow pounding to get out. Absurd. The dead don't make noise. A highway patrol officer approaches the window. Ed plasters on a sheepish smile. Evening, officer, he drawls, heart thudding dully in his chest. The cop's flashlight shines in Ed's face, sweeps over the empty passenger seat and the back seat clutter. Do you know why I pulled you over? Ed frowns politely. No, sir. Your tail light is broken. Get it fixed. Where are you headed tonight? The officer's tone is flat, just doing his job. Ed relaxes. Oh, I hadn't noticed. Thanks. I'll take care of it. I'm just driving home from work. He lies easily, gesturing vaguely back toward town. His voice is steady and warm, the voice of a well mannered young man. The flashlight beam lingers on the trunk for an agonizing second. Ed holds his breath. Then the officer clears his throat and steps back. All right, drive safe now. He tips his hat and turns away. Will do, sir. Have a good night, Ed replies amiably. As the patrol car U-turns and disappears down the dark highway, Ed lets out a long, slow exhale. A wild laugh threatens to well up in his chest, but he swallows it down. His fingers tap jittery on the steering wheel. They never suspect a thing. He continues into town and parks behind a dingy tavern. A neon beer sign buzzes in the window, casting a blue halo in the misty air. Inside, it's loud and bright, the air thick with cigarette smoke and stale beer. The contrast to the quiet woods is jarring. Ed strolls in and nods to a couple of regulars at the bar. Hey there, Big Ed, the bartender calls cheerfully. Ed raises a hand in a friendly wave and takes his usual stool. To anyone watching, he's just a tall, slightly awkward guy winding down with a late night pint. He orders a beer and sips slowly, savoring the normalcy. The cold, bitter brew washes the taste of adrenaline from his mouth. Behind his calm demeanor, Ed feels a familiar flicker of triumph. The world around him has no idea what he's just done. He glances out the bar's window at his car parked in the alley under the street lamp. He almost imagines he can see through the trunk's metal to the shape inside, a secret trophy only he knows about. And that's where I'm going to stop for tonight. That's basically the end of my first part. It's probably not as interesting as Chris Watts stuff, but I thought it was pretty good. Thank you. Yeah, the story gets even more and more crazy, but the real story is even crazier. The real details really kind of get to me sometimes. There was one incident where he trapped someone in a car, but then when he got out of the car, as I kind of described in my story here, he dropped his gun inside, and the gun was locked in the car with the girl, and he just asked her to open the door, and she did, and she died, and, like, it's just insane. But anyways, guys, I think that's gonna be all for tonight, tonight's live stream. But, if you're watching this later, just let me know what you thought and whether or not I should, continue trying to write this way and maybe doing these on my lives. I do have a lot more to read about this story. I've got another story, also that's got even more, um, but that's the Watts case one. But I think I'd like to write other stories, um, not just about Chris Watts, because with that story, there's only so many things you can tell over and over again, before it feels weird. Um, you know, I it's really the Watts story is really a hard story to like stomach anyway, and I've talked about it a lot. And I really wish that, some of the weird things that happened, in the first few days when this was all getting exposed, I think the police should have done things a little differently, explained themselves a little more and why they didn't investigate anyone else further and all of that. And yeah, but anyways, I think I'm gonna get going and maybe I'll write some more. I also did post another video today. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but it's about the Golden State Killer, Joseph D'Angelo. And I actually think that story, I mean, it's a documentary style story, but I think it's actually one of my better stories that I've written. I think the video quality is actually much better than some of my other ones, and I don't know. I think the way I told it is actually getting a little better. The problem is just getting YouTube to show it to people and people thinking, well, why should I watch this? Because there's a lot of good documentaries already out there. But the difference is whenever I talk about things, it's from, you know, I put my own take on it. But yeah, it's pretty good, and, it's a little bit longer than normal. I've been getting some feedback that, my stories are a little bit too short. They wanna know more, and then it's over. So, the reason I don't make them so long is because it takes so long to edit them. So, it also takes a lot longer to record them, but I'm getting better at recording them. Like you just saw me read through this thing and, I think it was pretty good. I wouldn't have had to edit much out of it to make it into an audio to go with a video. Um, Whereas like 4 months ago when I was making these and recording with my own voice, I would spend almost all day reading it just one time through and then all day the next day going through and cutting out all the mistakes. It's really time consuming, and it's pretty hard to do a video if unless you just make time to do it. um and yeah, I don't know, I've been working on these for a long time. I started last August, I want to say, and I started with a ghost channel, and I started just rambling on about how, what I thought about ghosts. I mean, there was no rhyme or reason to my story. I even like Googled things while I'm talking, and since then, I've came up with, like I started coming up with a plan, and then, my plan gets more and more concise as the longer I write, the more videos I do. And I think they're starting to finally get to the point where they're actually interesting. So if people would actually just look at them, I think they might be surprised that just some random guy could come up with a decent story, um, like I do. But I do read a lot, and I do a lot of research, and I watch other documentaries and things. So um, I mean, and I know that a lot of what I'm saying has already been said, But I try to put in, I try to dig into the psychology. I find it the most interesting. I try to focus on the why more than the how, kind of story. And yeah, but I really enjoy it. So I do appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening. And for those of you watching later, hey, sorry I missed you, but I'll catch you in the next video.